big theme, obviously, that we heard around Summit or at Summit was around AI. So I'd love to hear your perspective around, let's talk about AI, and then maybe we can frame that out bigger picture and thinking about Edge and some of the other announcements there. But what was your perspective and take on how AI and even the announcements that were made are going to really impact our customers and the experiences that they're driving towards?
I think obviously everyone is talking about AI these days, and the expectation is AI is going to bring a tremendous amount of productivity gain to a lot of industries. Now, the focus have been on training models, finding the best models in the past year and a half. And I think the discussions are now shifting to, okay, how are we going to leverage these models on meaningful applications? And the way to do it is through inferencing. So some of the big focus in the summit was, hey, how are we going to leverage inference for different applications? And this is kind of where one of the key announcements that came in from us, which is the AI inference server. If you're going to think about how AI will work, when you do inferencing, you really need to figure out, okay, which model you need to support, and then what hardware you're going to run on, and then where it's going to be run. So the concept of running any model on any accelerator, from NVIDIA to Intel to AMD and other silicon providers, and then on any spectrum of the hybrid cloud, right, from the cloud to data centers to the edge, you need an inference server that can support that, right? And this is where the announcement came in, right? We announced the Red Hat inference server, which serves just that: any model, any accelerator, any cloud.
Yeah, Kendall, the one thing I would just kind of add on to what Francis is sharing is that what's really great is that we actually had a partner at Summit, Edge Scale AI, that did presentations to a number of our customers in the industrial context around their AI offering. And what was really kind of fun to experience is, obviously before the announcement came out, we were kind of under embargo, and so we couldn't tell them everything that was happening. But they're actually a member of the community of VLLM. And within the solution that they run with us for their customers at the edge, so in manufacturing facilities, as an example, they're actually using VLLM within their solution stack. So there was an immediate kind of level of excitement on, like, there was even more connection and making them feel like they were making the right decisions around their movement to leveraging our platforms to run their models for all of the inference that happens for the customers. And now it's kind of expanded the conversation framework we can have with them around the level of supportability they can have within the stack that they're providing into this really important ecosystem.
Awesome. And so that leads into my next question. And I know this partner and several others were participating in our customer roundtables. So we had one on industrial modernization efforts and also one for energy. So can you expand on those sessions? What were some of the use cases that we're focused on, and where our partners and where is Red Hat and our partners coming together to help support some of those?
Yeah, so I would just kind of highlight that while the sessions were different in context, because the industries and what they provide as services to us as consumers are different, their challenges are pretty similar. And so both of the events, the roundtables that we had with both the manufacturing as well as the energy customers, were focused on the idea of kind of moving to more of a platform-based business model. In the past, post-industrial revolution, the idea has always been like you build a system or a thing, right, that produces specific output or manages specific tasks within, whether it's a factory or it's the way you run the electrical grid. And the way that that's starting to evolve is everything used to be very much like hardware defined, but that makes the life cycling and the manageability of these systems very challenging, especially when you think about the way that our society is changing and the way that they're expecting how things are made and how quickly they can get to us as consumers, or the way that the electrical grid is intended to run in the future, with all of us being consumers or power producers now with solar panels in our house or electric vehicles. And so there's a need to kind of move from this hardware definition to having a little bit more of the abstraction between the hardware and the application layer that actually kind of like drives the control of these different systems. And so both luncheons are really focused on this movement to become more software defined. And in many instances, by becoming software defined and having more of a common infrastructure platform, it's going to allow them to consolidate the applications onto a common platform and reduce the hardware footprint that they have, and really help to expedite or improve the way that they run the life cycle of these systems that are pretty mission critical to our society these days.
Yeah, I would add kind of two interesting observations from those sessions. One was that because the way systems were built, right, I remember one of the partners was saying that, hey, we have hardware from 1975 that is still in production. But then his thought was, hey, if you look at how silicon has evolved in the last 50 years, because Moore's law basically says you double your performance every 2 years or so. If you actually do the math, and I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a math nerd, but 2 to the power of 20, let's just say, is a gig. That's 1,000,000 times better, right? So because we stuck in some of these old way of thinking, we end up not taking advantage of technology advancements, like, 1,000,000 more times more powerful hardware. Yeah. If we structure the platform in a way that hardware and software separate, it's a lot easier for partners and customers to take advantage of technology innovation. The other tidbit that I took, which I thought was interesting, there was a comment that in the past, we buy box when we need to do something. And now we buy an app when we need to do something, which is really the right way of doing things in a software-defined approach.
Can you elaborate a bit around thinking about this coming from 1975 to today, right? Like, how is open source specifically helping to modernize, and what how are we aligning to the standards of today, and really being a leader in this space in the industrial industry?
Yeah, I was just trying to build on what you said earlier, Kelly, right? You talk about that platform approach, right? Then the question is, what should that platform look like? And I think what we're hearing from our customers and partners is they seeing the advantage of having that platform to be open source, because this is where we and our partners and ecosystem can collaborate together in the open, right? There's no proprietary APIs. The fact that we can drive a de facto standard in the open actually allows the vision of, hey, you should just buy an app, not the box. But the only way for that to work is that the APIs are standardized, and open source is the best way to achieve that purpose.
I think that the only piece that I would kind of highlight from what Francis said, because it was he said it, but we can kind of almost lose the lead, if you will. The concept of open source, while yes, it's not about proprietary software, the kind of core concept and the ethos that Red Hat really brings is around that collaboration model. So, the work that we have with whether it's partners or it's end customers always comes from that basis of, we're here to kind of build and learn together. It's not a supplier and customer type of relationship. It's how do we help solve the problems, leveraging the open source community in that software stack, but potentially even new innovations, which, to give a great example would be one of the announcements we haven't talked about, which is around the concepts of management at the edge. So our management at the edge has always been a big challenge, partly because of the level of heterogeneity they have both in the hardware stack as well as the OS business, right? There's a lot of Windows out there. There's a lot of like different variants of Linux. And we're kind of taking a step into being a leader to help show how that can be managed differently and working with our partners and customers on that. Like, Francis, do you want to give a little bit more detail into like what the team is doing on edge management?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. If you like Kelly said, right, part of the challenge of edge is there's just a wide variety of hardware, and then uh, also sometimes you don't have enough connectivity, right, on those devices. And other times you might not have the right IT expertise available in those edge locations. So what we try to bring to the market to solve that problem is, hey, let's just make it easy for our partners and customers to manage these fleets of devices, to have a single pane of glass where you can look at or take care of the whole life cycle of the edge devices, from onboarding to configuration to updating, and later on troubleshooting right through the life cycle. And we also try to make it more scalable in such a way that we take a policy approach, so that when devices come online as they are defined, then they check against what the compliant infrastructure and the application versions are, to make sure that they don't drift as these devices function over a long period of time.
If we think about, next year at this time, and it's Red Hat Summit 2026, what is the ideal state of how these conversations and kind of key themes that we've talked about today, what's the ideal state of how they will have evolved 1 year from today? Any thoughts?
That feels like a really big question. As much as a year doesn't feel like it's that far away, what we're seeing is such a rapid change in the way that people are thinking. What I foresee, and it's kind of like what happened last year. Last year, we started to have these roundtables and started to kind of get some of that engagement. We hadn't yet made the announcement like we just made with ABB around our platforms coming into the control ecosystem in manufacturing. So this year was almost a build on to last year. We were just as busy, but it was busy in a different way because people are starting to use the technology, and they're talking about more of the people and process challenges on how they need to change the way that they operate as an organization. So what I kind of foresee happening going into next year is that we're going to see a continued growth of that community. I'd like to say an explosion. Let's plan and put it in our vision board for an explosion of the community. And I think we're going to start seeing far more adoption of some of the standards, the modern standards around infrastructure automation. So thinking about the use of Kubernetes in these spaces that have traditionally been more of a virtualized environment. I think we've started those conversations. We have early wins, early customer engagement. And I think between now and a year from now, we're going to see an expansion of the number of customers wanting to have that conversation, the number of partners that we have that are really kind of looking to kind of take the next step from virtualization into more containerization for their systems. That's what I kind of foresee. I'm sure there will be still hype and discussion around AI, but many of them are still very much in kind of needing to kind of set those common platform conventions in order to accelerate their adoption of the use of AI. Francis, what about you?
I think you got it all. I'll just add one small thing, which is it's more like of a hope. I hope that there is a continuous mindset change in the way we work together. I really like the way you talk about open source is not just the code, but it's the collaboration, right? I think we're starting to see the momentum that companies, right, who are very used to proprietary technologies now recognize everyone in the community, everyone in the ecosystem actually benefit when they can come together and work together in an open way. And I'm hoping to see more of that in the next summit.
Yes, definitely. All right. So we are at time. Thank you both for joining today and providing your insights. And we will catch you next time.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thanks, Kendall.